Hey guys, I see a lot of speculation with these artists around something called the 80-20 rule, and they talk about it like it's the center of gravity, when the last time I checked, it's not. So I want to start by explaining what the 80-20 rule isn't. Now, these artists aren't entirely wrong, but it's worth understanding more than it is theorizing. I don't know, I feel like things like the 80-20 rule aren't meant to be anything but either explained or used for planning things out. Some artists argue that the 80-20 rule is about putting 80% of your time into promoting and 20% of it into making more music. This is true. I mean, that's not what the 80-20 rule actually is, but when you get to a point where promoting your music and making it begin to just melt into the same river, that's when I feel like a lot of the magic starts to happen. Then you really don't have to separate your focus, your habits kind of blend into each other, and it's all intertwined. In my experience, a lot of very interesting results begin to come from this. It's probably the healthiest way of going about music and promotion as we move into the future. So again, it's true, but it's not exactly the 80-20 rule. Other artists argue that the 80-20 rule is about putting 80% of your time into offering value to fans and potential listeners, and 20% of it into asking for some in return. This idea they have is more like a jab, 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 right hook sort of thing, where you ask people a question or two about themselves. You say, I really appreciate people who support my music. Maybe you tell a joke, then you say, hey guys, I have a song dropping tomorrow. Who wants to hear it? So there are 4 posts, tweets, whatever, of you giving, and then one of you asking. 4-1, 80-20. It does make sense, and it's true. Okay, so what is the 80-20 rule, if not that? While these are true, there's an actual economic universal meaning to the rule that applies to just about everything. But it's more based on results than approach, and you can use it for your approach to make it more productive and fruitful, for lack of a better term. Because when you study certain results, you can create your own version of them. There was an Italian economist in the 1800s named Vilfredo Pareto, but for now let's call him Lil Rado. Okay, that's his rapper name, Lil Rado. He has like GDP and Marx tattoos on his face. He has the words opportunity cost spelled out on his knuckles and tattooing. His hair is green, you know, like for money, some gold, maybe some blue for the newer $100 bills. So that's Lil Rado. And Lil Rado is quite the smart, business-savvy rapper, because he comes up with this thing at the time known as the Pareto principle, but now we call it the 80-20 rule. And here's how it can apply to other rappers, since he kind of blazed the trail for us. The idea is that 20% of one thing gives you 80% of the other, or 20% of one thing is as important as 80% of the other. What's weird is that as long as they both have to do with each other but are not exactly the same thing, with the exception of a couple other variables and such, it's true in just about every situation that you can think of. Here's some examples. 20% of the artists in the music industry make 80% of the money. A lot of the other 80% complain about it instead of figuring out how to join them. Because the best way to beat something is joining it and moving on from there, or offering something different and moving on from there. But you gotta move. You can't just fucking sit there with your dick in your hand and use your tears as lubricant over the money you don't have. 20% of the work yields 80% of the results. This is no reason to necessarily half-ass things, but when you find out the 20% of things in your song that got and kept 80% of everyone's attention who listened to it and started telling their friends about it, your perspective and your aim and your approach when it comes to actually making more music, they just might shift a little. And those little shifts every time get you closer and closer to what the market wants out of your sound. There are other things though, like experimentation and branding, but those are different video topics. 20% of the shit you do is just as important as the other 80% combined. Say you have a list of 10 things you want to do today. The 2 highest priority things on that list are going to be just as important as the other 8 combined, because those 2 are maybe bigger things that yield better results than any given 2 things of the other 8. It's a matter of looking at the results, evaluating them, and being like, okay, what did the most for me and my fans? What were the 2 things? The other 8 are only meant to be done either by you when you have time after doing the big 2, or by someone else. This is important because a lot of people focus on the other 8 since they're smaller, they're more trivial, each one takes less time to get done, so they get that little sense of instant gratification, etc. But part of joining the 20% of artists that make 80% of the money, if I had to make an educated guess, is probably not focusing on the 8 things, but focusing on the 2. Now, another way of looking at this is when you can tip the scale and look at it like, what if I aim for the 19% that gets me the other 81%? What about the 18% that gets me the other 82%? And so on until you have the 1% that gets you the other 99%. You just kind of wash, rinse, and repeat from there, and everything turns out in your favor. Because the 1% should be your focus. You find that laser vision tunnel of things that set you on fire, and then you go. So that's my explanation of the 80-20 rule. What do you guys think? What am I missing? Have you tried using this for longer than 2 days or weeks weeks or months, or maybe, I don't know, years. Did it work for you? Please let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions in general, please feel free to hit me up as well. There are links at the bottom of the description to all my social media. Make sure to leave a like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already. If you could turn on that little bell to get a notification when I drop a new video, that would mean the world to me. But until then, you can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.